Who we got next?
We have your New York Knicks next. This is the one that I didn't have that many options that I was too intrigued by, just because this is an older roster coached by Tom Thibodeau, who is notoriously hesitant to give young players big roles. So I defaulted to RJ Barrett here. I've said it on previous episodes. I think it was a mailbag question about where we think he goes next, that I actually think his per game numbers are going to go down a little bit this coming season, just because of the Kemba Walker inclusion, the Evan Fournier inclusion, continuing to feature Julius Randle, maybe plumbing a little bit more from Obi Toppin. But the way he impacts the game is going to be even more impressive, because we saw throughout this past season the growth in every aspect of the game. His feel for offensive sets. Previously, we'd seen teammates not even want to pass him the ball because he wasn't in the right spot, or if they did, they wouldn't get it back. He was a more willing passer. He was a more engaged teammate. He started to knock down shots from the corners. He made significant defensive strides to the point that he was sometimes tasked with taking on some of the toughest backcourt assignments. We're going to see all of that even more this coming season. So I don't expect this to be a huge numerical leap when you're looking just at the basic per game box score stats, but his impact on the game is going to be significantly upticked this year.
I didn't pick him just because I don't know what his role is on offense anymore after all the additions they made. And I think for him to break out, he probably needs to have a more active self-creation role, and they're not built for him to do that. I agree with everything you said on defense, because you can boil it down to this. Who's guarding the toughest perimeter assignment outside of the point guard spot every single night right now? It has to be RJ Barrett, unless you think that Quentin
100%.
Grimes is going to play right away. So, yeah.
Alec Burks isn't.
I mean, he might have to, just because who is it going to be? Evan Fournier?
I hope not.
But RJ Barrett, he took on a pretty sizable defensive role for them last season. He's going to take on a bigger one now. Agree with everything you said there. I went with Obi Toppin just because he looked more like an NBA player towards the end of last season. I don't know that they've done anything to increase his minutes. You're not going to see. I would love to see him and Randall play together at points and just the Knicks try and score 1 trillion points per 100 possessions. But re-signing Nerlens Noel, bringing back Taj Gibson, a healthy Mitchell Robinson probably precludes that from happening. He should still subsume a lot of the backup 4 minutes, because you don't have anyone who's going to be playing a small ball 4 role on this team unless you decide to play Barrett or Fournier up, which would be weird. Maybe you believe in Kevin Knox a little bit still.
I think you could do it with Barrett a little bit.
You could, but I default a lot to what people defend as their position. He still is probably going to have to be the 3 or the 2 based on his defensive assignment. So you could. Maybe if you still want to play Kevin Knox, then there's that element to it as well. I just don't know if the Knicks have the personnel to ensure that Obi Toppin plays fewer minutes than he did last year. I think he'll play a little bit more. His offense, he can make really quick passes after he picks up the ball on the move. There's the shooting, obviously. I also think that there's more slate of direction to his game. He can get around guys and have these tough finishes. There was last season, he just had this wild baseline play that finished in an absurd pass. There's a lot of versatility there on the offensive end. And I think he just looked like a guy who had more of a clue how to play at both ends of the floor towards the end of last year. And I think that might be good enough to help him crack the rotation this season.
He was hurt at the beginning of the season too, right? Didn't that play a part in the delayed growth?
It did and it didn't, just based off how the Knicks what the Knicks were clearly interested in doing. I honestly thought about picking no one for this team. I think that speaks to how good RJ Barrett was last season, more so than any insult here. And I don't know what Immanuel Quickley's role is going to be with Kemba, Derrick Rose. It should still be pretty sizable, but if you want to play Deuce McBride a little bit too, and you assume Kemba and Derrick Rose miss games, you could go with him. I'd listen to it. But I think Toppin is the clear pick here. The Orlando Magic.
Before we move on, though, I have to share my pre-draft prediction on Obi Toppin, because I always like to put out a couple of bold takes that I actually believe in.
Who the Knicks actually should have picked.
Agreed. But I still said before we knew where he was going, Obi Toppin's translatable 3-level scoring skills will make him the first all-star from this class. Expect multiple seasons above 20 points per game, even if his defensive inadequacy keeps him out of the All-NBA conversation. And, that seems a little bit too high on him now. I will readily admit that. but I'm also never going to switch my opinion on a guy that fast. Especially when there's growth towards the end of the rookie season. Like, yeah, that was too high of a ceiling, but that doesn't change how much I like him as a prospect.
What it boils down to me is, will the Knicks play him over Taj Gibson?
And that's the issue, because I don't trust Tibbs to play anyone who hasn't been on the Bulls.
Yeah, I mean, Joakim Noah could still sign and come out of retirement.
Right. I legitimately would not rule that out.